They're awesome. Let's look at the tariff troubling. The tariff trouble troubling. Now, let's take a look first at one dimension of this. I just saw a statistic today that says 1 in 3 businesses plan on hiking prices. Those are the ones that haven't already done it due to Trump's tariffs. Again, for those people who are MAGAites, can you excuse a patently, easily recognizable, unconstitutional statute from Congress in the 1970s that says, well, if the president defines it as a national emergency for security, he can lay a tariff on some country? What? Where are you pulling that? Homie, don't play that. Revenue bills have to start in Congress, period. Now, again, if you're going to vote and you're going to go with that, don't vote. How about that? Because you're a hypocrite. If you think that Trump can just lay down these tariffs and you think that that statute is constitutional, you're a joker. You don't know what you're talking about. You'd be laughed out of an 8th grade civics class, for God's sake. Don't think you're an adult. Stop fooling yourself, sticks. By the same token, if you think that they're economically successful, you're historically wrong. They're never, ever, ever, ever successful. And the reason they're not successful is because they're immoral. They're taxes. And they seize people's opportunities to decide for themselves what they want to get. I know, it's crazy. It's wacky. They increase people's expenses, draw away that extra leverageable, savable capital that they could have spent on something else, and take away their opportunities. They incur opportunity costs on them that they shouldn't have to incur. And therefore, you don't get a properly functioning economy. What's ironic about that is a bunch of people in pop media look at the price increases caused by these taxes, which are additional price increases that try to steer people's behavior to buy American or buy this or buy that. Might as well just point a gun at somebody. You better buy American. Because that's what's at the end of the taxes. If you don't pay the taxes, they'll come for you and they'll have guns. And by the way, your taxes pay for the guns too. Isn't that wonderful? That's great too. So they will force you to pay more, and then the pop media will back it up and say, oh, it's inflation. No, that's not inflation. Inflation is the inflation of the money supply, as the Austrian economists understood, and as most economists, even the classical economists like Ricardo understood. It's an inflation of the money supply, not price increases. The price increases are caused by the inflation of the money supply because it bids up all the prices of the products by putting more money into the system. Just like having a bunch of people in an auction, and all of a sudden a mafia guy takes 100 extra people and says, go into that room and go bid on the products. The people who were already in there would have already known what their high threshold would be, and you'd have generally what the high point would be. Now you got all these extra people going in there with an unlimited supply of money. What's going to happen to the price of the product? Of course, it's going to get bid up. Everybody's competing for it. And if you have a certain productivity curve, but your monetary expansion is even steeper, you're losing that amount of buying power every time. And it goes year upon year upon year, and it's additive. It's an additive function. So it doesn't cause inflation to increase prices through taxes. Inflation occurs when you inflate the money supply, and then the price increases follow. This is a direct added price put onto something by the government that you have to pay to the mafia. That's what it is. So 1/3, I saw this stat today, nearly one in 3 businesses plan on hiking prices due to Trump's tariffs. This not only will cost consumers more to get what they want, it will siphon away opportunities for those consumers to utilize what they would have been saving and spending it on new products, on new investments, and, Donald, on new jobs. So here's the link to this information for you. Here we go. 1 in 3 businesses are planning to hike prices this coming year. Nearly 1 in 3, that's, by the way, for the Illuminati people, 33.3, of course, within the next 6 months are going to be raising prices, according to LendingTree. The Lending Tree finding that 30.9% of businesses anticipated charging more in the next 6 months arrives as companies, large and small, are confronting rising supplier costs and new tariffs imposed by President Donald Trump. Of course, businesses are confronting two related pressures: rising costs for goods and services from suppliers and an uncertain tariff landscape that could increase import duties on a broad range of products, the survey found. Lending Tree found that 50.7% of businesses expected higher costs in the coming months, and 30.9% plan to raise the prices they charge within the next 6 months. So what are you doing? How are you planning to change things? What will you do? You let me know. Did you buy early? Did you try to do something to get around this? Are those shelves going to be looking bare because of the supply chain cutoffs that Donald Trump has already imposed, because of sanctions that also Joe Biden imposed? Can't get this, can't get that. We're going to put a massive tariff against Brazilian beef. We're going to have tariffs against Venezuela, tariffs against Canada. Have a great time trying to get lumber, maple syrup, Russian energy, fertilizer, because, of course, in order to make the bentonite clay, you got to burn stuff really high, and that requires natural gas. That's okay. Got a little infographic to show you. This one comes from Money Talk News. And let me just go back here and show it to you. Here we go. Trump's trillions tariff claim. Now, as I mentioned in the news notes, they're just simply correcting this spurious claim by Donald Trump that he suddenly out of nowhere, probably just because he doesn't really care what he says, said that the U.S. government had already made hundreds of trillions of dollars. U.S. government's already made trillions of dollars. Tariffs are a big success, which would be even worse if the U.S. government had siphoned away trillions of dollars. Right now, it's just $100 billion, headed towards $300 billion, according to Scott Bessent. And they were patting themselves on the back for that, those vampires. It's like a bunch of ghouls sucking away your life going, we're doing great. This is awesome, right? Well, here's the infographic. They just did this so that they could correct things, but I'll show it to you here. Here we go. President Trump claimed, let me get rid of the closed caption here, claimed Tuesday that his tariffs have collected trillions of dollars in revenue. He did that on True Social because it's so well named. The actual figure is far lower, according to Treasury Department data. Now, they were nice enough to actually inject a little bit of truth here. Two portions of truth. Trump's tariffs have generated about $96 billion since taking effect in April. Now, generate is not the word that I would use. Would you use generate? Generate to me has an association with productivity. It's created some value. This is extraction of value. This is stolen about $96 billion. You might want to get an editor there over at Money Talks. Trump's tariffs have stolen about $96 billion since taking effect in April. And what's great is some of the money went to creating those charts. Awesome. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, looking so proud, expects tariffs to bring in $300 billion. As we said, hi, I'm a thief. Oh, yeah, I'm a thief. Economists project the levies could raise $2.5 trillion over the next decade. Steal $2.5 trillion over the next decade. And that means jobs, of course. And, however, they finally say U.S. companies pay these tariffs when importing goods, which with costs pass on to consumers. Thank you, Money Talks. Thank you. You might have wanted to mention that from the start. That would have been nice. So there you go. That's some pleasantness. Let me know how you're preparing. Maybe sacrificing a goat or something like that. I'm not sure. Yeah, Dustin Elm says, don't worry. You'll get $3,750 credit on your tax returns. Roast with wine. Ooh, Cecilia, boy, that looks good. Good night. That looks good. Man, good stuff. Okay. Now, to continue with our tariff information, Little lesson in tariffs from the school board, the blackboard, to this. Here we go. This is the effect of Donald Trump's tariffs on India's behavior and China's behavior. These governments, it's not harming them. They're getting closer to each other. They're finding ways to trade more with each other with the knowledge that when they can trade with each other, they can eventually pass it off to third parties and still make good profits.
When you see
meeting and agreements, can you talk to us about that?
what's interesting is that Donald Trump's trade war is now pushing the two countries, India and China, the two Asian superpowers, two most populous countries in the world, together, given the fact that Donald Trump's trade war, around 50% of tariffs slapped on India, around 30% tariffs slapped on China. In that backdrop, when you see all of these high-level meetings, not just the Chinese foreign minister coming here, but look at the delegation that he's meeting. He met with his counterpart, Dr. S. Jaishankar, India's foreign affairs minister, also the Indian NSA, that's Ajit Doval, the national security advisor. And now he is also going to be meeting the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. So the very fact that Donald Trump has been poking the two countries for the last several weeks with tariffs, and that is something in the backdrop of that, the two countries coming together is very, very interesting. Ever since the Galvan clashes we've seen back in 2020, we've not seen this level of high. So all of these developments, they may not really mean that all is well and the bilateral relationship between India and China is all okay, but it definitely means there is an upward trend in the relationship of the two countries.
So they're going to be working on minerals, on energy, and a lot of other things as they work together to try to skirt Donald Trump's tariffs. And as we saw already, we saw that the Chinese are starting to drink more coffee from South America because of Donald Trump's tariffs against Brazil. So it's very clear that, of course, markets try to find ways, just like liquidity in money, it's a liquid. It tries to find the source as best as possible. And yes, the margins might go a little higher, but within the margins that Donald Trump might impose because of the tariffs, there still could be a profit margin in getting things into third and fourth parties for resale. And so we turn to the lesson in economics that Ron Paul provided, the lesson about tariffs that I mentioned, that tariffs don't cause inflation.
Trade or punishing consumers, Dr. Paul.
You know, this is a big debate going on in the financial markets. If they see a blip up on some prices, then the people who want Trump to look badly, they say, see, it's the Trump policy, it's Trump policy. The tariffs are giving us inflation. Well, that is not exactly true. Federal Reserve causes the inflation by printing money for all the debt that the Congress, votes up. So that's the thing that's going on. But Trump is not doing well. I think with the tariff, because the first thing is, billions and billions of dollars are being collected, and this is supposed to do this, and it doesn't cause inflation. Other people say it causes inflation. The only way it can contribute to inflation, it contributes to price increases on the areas where the tariffs get involved. But price increases are not automatically inflation. It's inflation. It is inflated prices for various reasons. If you have a hurricane, and in the area of the hurricane, prices go up, you don't call that inflation. You know, it's a result.
That's exactly right. Now, I want to bring something up, and this is a point that I have. It's a point of contention that I've had for a long time since I was a teenager reading Milton Friedman's, I think it was his book, Money Mischief, and I mentioned this before. But my dad gave me Money Mischief, I guess, when I was like 13 or something, and I read it, and I said, Dad, there's a problem here with what Milton Friedman is saying, because in it, he said, let me give you an example of inflation. And he said, let's say there's a supply shock to gasoline. that will cause prices to increase down the line because you require gasoline for transport, for fertilizer, for machines, for harvesting, for all sorts of things. Virtually everything is going to be running on some sort of petrochemical, so it's going to cause prices to go up. I said, Dad, that's not inflation of the money supply. That's not inflation. Those are price increases. And he said, you're right. And I said, in fact, Dad, I think it's important to recognize that when you get some supply shock, like an earthquake or a hurricane, natural disaster, something happens in the food supply, a drought, locust, whatever, if you can extract the central banking inflationary aspect of it, and you just had a steady money supply, prices would go up, of course, because what you're trying to get is harder to get. But I said to my dad, your money is still providing you power. What it is now doing is it's not necessarily getting you the same amount of that particular tangible good that you wanted, but it now has a greater intangible value in getting you access to what's left of the goods. He said, that's exactly right, Gard, because there's always the need for, included in the price is the need to get access to it based on supply and demand. So if your supply goes down and there's a dearth of something, but your dollar is not manipulated by the central government, or your money supply is not manipulated, and you've got a steady money supply, prices will go up. But that differential is now providing you something that was less important in the past and now is becoming more of an important aspect to it, whether it's something that people might think of say the color of a car or something like that. It's this new intangible thing. It's access to that item that's harder to get. And that's just a fundamental fact of economics. And I was amazed that Milton Friedman was so off base in Money Mischief. It blew me away. I was like, this is crazy, because, especially at that age, I sort of thought, well, Milton Friedman's, pretty on the ball. Of course, then I started to explore more, and I realized the mistakes of the Chicago school and the supply siders. And so then I looked into the Austrian school. I got my dad's copy of Human Action, which he annotated, 800 pages. Like, wow, this is great, Dad. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you ever have a son, daughter, or anything like that who's interested in reading some of Friedman's stuff, and they pick up that book, you might want to look for that in the book and try to rectify that, because that can give people a mistaken impression of what can, that a dearth of something can lead to inflation. That's not the case. It just has a new qualitative substance to it that you're purchasing. And inflation is based on the buying power of your monetary unit, comparable to what it used to have in the past, and the bidding of that monetary unit that is caused by the central bank. And of course, if you look at the plans of the government and the central bank, they plan to increase the money supply and decrease the value of your monetary unit by about 2.5% every year. And again, that's functionally compounded. So that's ridiculous. It's insane. Why anybody would want to keep their money in the bank, I have no idea. It's just crazy. So that is something I wanted to mention. Oh, hey, I see that someone reposted the stream. Demon Rats and Republican. Hey, thank you so much. Thanks, man. That's great. You're awesome. I love your tweets, dude. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get to a couple of the other items that we want to discuss tonight. Want to get your feedback from the Russians as we get on top of things. I didn't get to mention this yesterday, but when it comes to Donald Trump and his central planning and his tariffs, he also has been playing a lot of favorites, as we saw with his supposed deals, as he actually tripled and in one case quintupled the amount that you're going to have to pay, the percentage you're going to have to pay for incoming goods from Europe and from Japan. Triple from Japan, 5 times as high now on the tariff coming from European goods. And he tried to say that he was getting great deals for certain American consumers because he was going to be bringing jobs to America, or he was getting deals for companies like Tesla and different chip manufacturers to be able to sell overseas, right? Okay, well, you might have seen this, and I didn't get to talk about it yesterday, and I want to talk about it. Number nine on our list in the news notes over at my Substack is we were going to discuss this last night on Liberty Conspiracy, but we ran out of time. We Russian conspirators here. We ran out of time. Over the weekend, the pop media began to buzz with excitement, buzz in the eardrum, as Wire would say, over another major fascist move by Trump to buy a large stake of Intel, the chip manufacturing company. And Biden was doing this sort of stuff too. He wanted to get a chip manufacturer brought into Texas. It's all corporate gamesmanship, whether it's the military-industrial complex or it's the pharma complex. It's a new form of colonialism. That's what it is. And that's what they're going to do in Ukraine. You can bet on it. It's the new form of the British colonial system. They're doing it by overthrowing countries, bringing in special favors for their corporate friends to rebuild these countries and then extract wealth from them. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick is gushing about this new stake that the U.S. government is going to have in a private corporation or a public corporation, Intel.